What is it like to actually live in Australia? If you're considering the great move down under, you're going to want to know what life is actually like. G'day guys, my name's Ross and I moved with my family to Australia during a global pandemic. If you're thinking of making the move down under, then I'm going to share with you my experience and what it's like living in Australia. The first thing, what's it like with work? In the UK, I was a teacher for about 10 years, and like most people there, I was finding myself a little bit burnt out and a bit disenfranchised with what it's like to be a teacher in the UK. I felt like I was working too hard and I felt undervalued, especially when it comes to pay. Is that something that's sounding very familiar to you? The biggest challenge for us was that we were feeling that we weren't really getting paid enough for the type of lifestyle that we wanted to lead. So the first massive difference of living in Australia is I get paid more. For the job that I do, I get paid around 40% extra compared to what I did in the UK. Now I know that this isn't the same for all of the professions in Australia, and to be honest, it's up to you to check out exactly how much you're going to get paid for your job. And while some jobs are going to pay less as a percentage of what I'm getting, some are actually going to pay more. Now let's face it, life isn't all about how much you get paid. And to be honest, if that's something that you value, maybe Australia isn't for you. But because of the general laid-back lifestyle that there is in Australia, I find myself not working too hard, getting paid more so I feel more valued in my position. And the best bit, I don't spend half the year going to work in the darkness and then coming home in the darkness. The second thing, the cost of living. Well, if you're already getting paid more, does this make the cost of living easier? And the answer is kind of. Costs of living are going up everywhere in the world. And right now, inflation is a real problem. Now, after living here for nearly 2 years, we found that our expenses are around about 18% more than compared to what we were spending in the UK. Now, I'm not a mathematician, I'm actually an English teacher. But when you're getting paid 40% more versus 18% more costs, I think we're onto a winner. Now that's not to say that you're not going to get shocked the first time that you go shopping and see the price of capsicums. That's peppers for you and me. In Australia, you can get caught out with buying things because prices can vary wildly throughout the year and even week to week. Take the cost of a lettuce at the moment. It's 12 bucks. I had a look at the price of snow peas and they were $34 a kilo. I'd rather have steak. The simple answer? Just don't buy it. In Australia, we don't have the benefit of being able to fly in food from far-flung places all around the world. Let's try and say that 3 times fast. And a bit like the olden days, when you had to wait for things to be in season, that's just what you do here. Sure, if you want snow peas, buy them. 34 bucks a kilo. But if you want a carrot, I think they're about $2 a kilo. And with regards to the cost of other things, cars, mortgages, house bills, some of them are going to be more, some of them are going to be less. I've got lots of solar panels on my roof, so right now I'm not paying a lot for my electricity bill. But if I lived in Tasmania, that might be a bit different. Once you get over the initial shock of how much things cost, and then you remember how much it is that you're getting paid, pretty soon things that you scoffed at for the price when you moved here are going to seem a fair price in the end. And the next thing is to do with housing, because next to work, that's probably the place that you're going to want to spend most of your time. We traded up a 3-bedroom semi-detached house in the UK for a 5-bedroom detached house with a pool in Australia. Now I know that prices in southeast Queensland have gone crazy over the last 12 months, but depending on where you're starting from, there are still some very affordable places to live in Australia. Yes, if you want to live close to the CBD in Sydney or Melbourne, you're probably not going to be able to afford it. But if you're looking at other cities and you're happy to live a little bit further out, there are some real bargains and you can get a lot for your money. I'm not going to lie and say that we were really fortunate in buying our house that we live in Brisbane, but for the time that we moved, we were able to trade up our house for 3 times the land and about 3 times the size of the house. Even our first rental place that we got was bigger than our house in the UK. It's not fair in saying that in Australia there's all these cheap houses going around and you can just cherry pick them out of the air. You're going to have a little bit of a look, but there are houses out there, and in comparison to the UK, I'd say that you can get a pretty decent lifestyle and a pretty affordable house if you look. And if you do find an area that's too expensive for your budget, well, what did you do in the country that you already lived in? Probably couldn't live there. Sorry, that's life. Now the main factor for us in moving to Australia was the lifestyle. For us and our family, we love the outdoors. And to be honest, after living here for nearly 2 years, I still feel like sometimes I'm on holiday. Where we live, we've got access to the beach, we've got access to the mountains, there's loads of beautiful national parks that you can go and have a wander around in, and no, you don't have to worry about the wildlife too much. I've only seen snakes a few times, and you just don't go near them. Don't get me wrong, the fantastic weather makes it so easy to enjoy the outdoor lifestyle. But like everywhere, we have our fair share of extreme climatic events. Whilst I enjoy the sunshine when it comes, I have to say that our wet weather this summer really did remind me what it was like living in the UK. And when it rains all the time, it's depressing. If you value getting outdoors and spending some time with your family and just enjoying this wonderful nature around us, then maybe Australia's for you. If you're starting to think that Australia's for you, then maybe you want to speak to our friends at True Blue Migration Services. True Blue Migration Services is one of Australia's oldest and most experienced group of MARA registered agents. We couldn't have made the move to Australia without the help of a migration agent. There's just so much paperwork that you have to fill in, and they're so expensive already that what happens if you get some of that stuff wrong? True Blue Migration Services are able to help out with every aspect of your visa application. And if you don't know where to start on your visa journey, they offer a free assessment and they can tell you which is the best visa for your situation. And that leads me nicely on to my next point, because what would your visa status be? If you're a permanent resident like us, then that opens you up to all of the opportunities, things like buying a house, childcare subsidy, and just general things that you probably forget about in the country that you already live in. Whilst I still recommend making the move over here on a temporary visa, wouldn't you want to speak to a migration agent just to see what your pathway would be to get permanent residency? One of the major things that I regret is not making the move over to Australia sooner. And whether that would have meant a temporary visa or permanent residency, make sure you speak to someone like True Blue Migration Services to guide you on your journey to Australia. Now I know I've been painting this rose-tinted view of what it's like to live in Australia, and there are going to be times where you miss friends and you miss family, and things like that are just going to generally bring you down. What if you don't make any new friends when you get here? Well, if you've got an upbeat, cheery nature and you love to meet new people, then Australians are definitely going to want to be your friend. It's not to say that if you're not outgoing, you're not going to meet new people, but living in Australia and trying to live an Aussie lifestyle is going to mean that you're going to need to put yourself out a little bit. The whole process of moving to Australia is going to be fraught with challenges. And if you haven't got the type of mentality that means you're not going to want to keep pushing through, then I'm going to tell you now that you're going to struggle. What happens when you realise that the houses over here really aren't designed for the cold? Are you going to blame Australia? Of course you're not. Just go and put a jumper on. What are you going to do when you realise online shopping doesn't happen as quickly as it did in your own country? Don't moan about it. Just wait a bit longer. What are you going to do when you realise that Australia is so incredibly isolated and it's kind of hard to get round to other countries for travel? Don't be a whinging pom. Just go out and visit the beautiful country that you actually live in. My next point is about healthcare. And touch wood, whilst we haven't experienced too much of Australian healthcare, we have been to the emergency department because poor old Aurora hurt her arm, and my wife and I are currently expecting our second baby in Australia. Whilst I had no issues with the UK healthcare at all, I have to say that Australian healthcare is fantastic. Yes, sometimes you have to pay for things on Medicare, but with your higher wages and better purchasing power, sometimes you don't mind paying for things if you're going to get a bit of a better service. We've experienced healthcare on Medicare that we would have never had the option to on the NHS. You can get doctor's appointments quickly, and generally speaking, you can see the people that you need to for the conditions that you might have. Overall, Australia isn't perfect. In fact, it's probably far from it. But if you want to make the move here and you want to experience the lifestyle, the first thing you need to do is sit down and think about what are the things that you value in life. If you value the outdoors, you might want to move to Australia. If you don't want to feel so overworked and undervalued, you might want to move to Australia. If you're an open-minded person with a bit of a sense of adventure and you want to experience something new, then you might want to move to Australia. If you're early in your journey with wanting to move here and you want some help from a MARA registered agent, make sure to speak to our friends at True Blue Migration Services and watch this video to see what it's actually like living in this beautiful country. See you later.